Welcome to Roxy's Journal of Stitchery. This is episode 41, and in today's video what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding some embellishments to my quilt block, like this old lace, and there'll be bits of lace going around the edges, and then I'm also going to start working on my house. So starting off with a few pieces of lace around the edge, I'm just using a plain white sewing machine cotton, a vintage one, the one that I use all the time, and I'm just doing little stitches over parts of the lace just to catch it in place. So I go all the way across the top, just tiny little running stitches to catch the lace, and then I go down the side and around the bottom as well. I don't do stitches all throughout the whole lace, that would take a really long time. What I do going around the edges is firm enough to make sure that it doesn't come loose or start peeling up. My first piece of lace is now in place, and this is another piece that I've cut off. It was a doily, had a bit of damage on it, so I've just cut off one edge, and I'm doing the exact same thing where I'm stitching over little pieces of the lace, and I start off by just securing this top sort of circular piece all over the place. You'll see that I'm doing it everywhere to make sure that it's nice and secure. And then I'll go down the side, down the outer edge, and then back up around the other pieces of lace to hold them in place. With my first two pieces of lace in place, I'm now starting to play around with my layout of my block again, like I was doing last week. So I've got my little quilt piece, my vintage quilt piece, for the body of the house, that blue floral and red floral piece, and then the striped red one is also a vintage piece that I'm going to use for the roof. So I've got a few other bits of lace and flowers and things like that I'm just seeing what will work well when I decide to stitch it all down. You can see here that I'm stitching another piece of lace along the bottom right hand edge just to make it a bit more interesting. It was a bit plain down in that corner. And all these laces that I'm using are really old vintage ones that I would assume were probably handmade. Like, I can't imagine that they weren't handmade because they do seem to be quite old. Now it's time to add my little house, and I'm just playing around with the positioning of where I'm going to stitch it. So I'm wondering if I want it fairly centered or slightly off center. And I end up going with the placement in the middle of the block. So I'm going to secure this first piece just with a running stitch. Again, using just thin sewing machine cotton in white, vintage cotton. So everything I'm using is pretty much vintage. And it's just a running stitch back and forth to hold that piece of fabric down, and then I will do some stitching, just little overcast stitches around the outside of the roof. So that the main part of the house, the block of the house is in place, and now it's time to play around with the roof. So I've got this little scallop trim, which I quite like, and then I also have this other little trim. And I was thinking I could layer them up, which would give it an interesting look. But then I decided to go against it because it would actually make it a little bit too bulky under the edge of the roof. So I'm just going to roughly tack this blue piece of scallop trim in place so that when I come to sewing the roof down, this trim is already in the right spot and it won't slide around everywhere while I'm stitching down my roof. Now my roof is quite a thin fabric, so I'm just doing a tiny little overcast stitch and I'm trying to sort of line my stitches up with the white lines of the roof so you don't notice them too much. So I start by going across the bottom of the roof. Every second white line I do a stitch, and then I also go around the edges. But when I go around the edges, I do a stitch on every single white line. So as you would know, we've had Rachel here for almost 2.5 weeks, and in fact today is her last day before she leaves tomorrow. We've been getting up to a lot of good things in terms of stitching. So she's been to several stitch shops with Mum, collecting up some threads, and then she has also been able to go to 3 of the different sewing basket shops. So we have 3 of those shops in Sydney. One's in Balmain, one's the big one, and original one is in Newington, and then they have a new store that is opened up in Caringbah. And over the past week, we've been able to go to all 3 of them. And each time we've come out of that store with a lot of goodies, particularly a lot of sort of crewel embroidery or just general wool embroidery threads. So many Appleton threads, some DMC, some other brands, but a lot of Appleton, as many Appletons as we could find. So most of the stores sell them for like $1.50, I think it is, the Appleton wools. But the Caringbah store yesterday that we went to actually sold them for 50 cents. So we both stocked up massively, and they had a lot of different colours, which was great. So we were thinking, Rachel ran out of time now. She doesn't really have time. We're going out to dinner soon. It's almost night time in Australia for her final dinner with the family. And then we were thinking of doing a haul video, but we've decided that there's no more time left for that. But if I get time, I might do one because we did get some similar things, some vintage embroideries and lots of different threads and things like that. The other thing we got to do, and I might pop this into a bonus video, so I might do a bonus video with this stash from the sewing basket that I got, so you can see the cool things that we were finding, as well as I might show you a bag that we made at a class at a place called the Happen Store. Now the Happen Store, if you're in Sydney, is on Parramatta Road in Annandale, and it's run by the lovely Kath. And I did actually take quite a few pictures in her shop, and I took pictures of Kath and Rachel and etc. So I might put them into a bonus video and show you a little bit about what's at the Happen Store. Now Kath, who owns the Happen Store, runs a lot of different classes, and on the weekend Rachel, my mum, myself and one of my friends, Sue, we all went to the Happen Store for a class where we were doing different types of embroidery on a little drawstring bag. Now, most of the stitches, well, in fact, I think for me and probably for Mum, we were able to do all of them. We knew how to do them already because we've both had classes with Kath before. But some of the techniques or the stitches may not have been new, but the techniques might have been slightly different for Rachel. So she learnt a few new tricks, which was good. So you meant to sort of play around with embroidery on both sides of your bag. I've almost finished one side of my bag and I have the second side to go. So I'll bring that in another pop-up video so you can see some of the things we do. And Kath that runs the store is just so creative. We like doing classes, even if we know how to do the techniques. We just like learning from Kath because she gives you lots of great ideas. So the trims I'm cutting up here again have come from the sewing basket. You know, I would have got these little bags. I think they were 50 cents for the bag, just a little black bag of trim. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fussy cut out a few different flowers. You'll see towards the end of the video which ones I go for. But all these flowers have come from the sewing basket. So another thing that we were very excited to be able to do was to join a friend of ours, Lisa, for lunch on Monday. Lisa is another amazing stitcher, very much a fantastic slow stitcher, and her name is Lisa Mattock, and she has a business called Forage, or I think she calls it Forage by Lisa. I'll link it at the bottom. And we just went and had a great lunch with her and had great fun looking in her studio at all the beautiful vintage fabric. She gets a lot of stuff from France. She does trips over to France. So another person who, if you're in Australia and particularly in Sydney or around New South Wales, and I know she does sometimes teach interstate as well and overseas, she's definitely one to look up because her work's very inspiring and it will give you really great ideas for your slow stitching project. And she has classes that you can do both in person, and also she has some online classes as well. So Lisa, another really creative person that Rachel and I are very inspired by, and I will link her in the video description along with I'll link Kath from the Happen Store in my other video when I do a little bit of a show and tell of what we did in her class. And I'll link Lisa Mattock in this video here. So I'll link her website and her Instagram just in case you're interested in going to have a look. She also sells really beautiful fabric bundles and some different types of threads as well. And I know she's about to go away on I think it's a 5-day retreat to the Blue Mountains. When would it be? Next week, maybe after Easter. I'm not sure when it is, but it's coming up soon because she had a lot of kits that she was putting together and fabric bundles and supplies for that course when we popped over to see her. So she does have another one coming up, another retreat later on this year. I think she said it was in September. You'll be able to see the details on her website. And that one is going ahead in the Hunter Valley. So a fun person to be around and to be inspired by. Both Kath and Lisa are really worth checking out, particularly if you're in Sydney or in Australia. So whilst I've spoken through my video, I've just stitched down this old French laundry label. I'm using 6-stranded red cotton there. And I use the kind of pattern that I know Rachel uses sometimes because I like the look of that. And now I've got my little house in place, and then just to show you, I'm thinking of putting 3 pink flowers on either side. And so next video I'll be doing my embellishing, like stitching down my flowers, probably doing some other embroidery, and then I've got to add the details to my house like little windows, doors and things like that. So hope you enjoyed this quick video this week, and I will see you again next week for the embellishment of my block. So thanks for watching. Bye.